Hi, my name's Stephen Hills, and welcome to another episode of Recovery Life, where the Peer Recovery Services Department at Chesapeake Integrated Behavioral Healthcare talks about issues of life and recovery and of peer support. I am joined today with one of my co-hosts, Cottrell Lewis, another peer supporter at Chesapeake Integrated Behavioral Healthcare, and also by Christine Winner, who is a peer supporter with Emergency Services and also the Mobile Crisis Unit. And also we're joined for the first time by Tracy Hinton, who is our newest peer supporter at the Crisis Receiving Center, Herons Cove. And it's really great to be here today with y'all to talk about a really important topic, and that is about peers supporting people in crisis. And so, crisis, SAMHSA gives a really detailed definition of crisis as a behavioral health crisis, an acute episode of severe distress associated with a mental health or substance use disorder requiring emergency intervention. So basically, it's bad and you have to do something about it immediately. And that can take a lot of different forms, all depending on someone's story. But whatever the form, there are some elements that are really important for crisis care that peers are deeply involved with. And that is, and I believe a graphic is popping up on the screen as well, that we have someone to talk to during a crisis, that is incredibly important. Also, that we have someone to respond to people who are in crisis, and also that people in crisis have somewhere to go where they can be safe and they can be heard and they can be supported in their recovery. And so, with someone to talk to, there are a lot of different ways that happens. 988 is one. The mental health crisis hotline, also warm line like the MHV warm line at 866-400-6428. And pretty soon we'll be talking with Christine about the Mobile Crisis Unit. That is someone to respond, that when you're in crisis, sometimes you can't get somewhere. And so it's great to have someone to come to you and then somewhere to go. And Tracy will be talking about what she does at Herons Cove. But as I said before, crisis looks different for every person. And so I know for me, when I was in crisis, I could barely function. It was a mental health crisis. I was completely hopeless. I felt like if I didn't do something very quickly, that I wouldn't be around anymore. And unfortunately, there were very few options available to me at the time. But, what does crisis look like, or what did crisis look like for you?
For me, and everyone's crisis is different. Everyone, the way you perceive what's a crisis to you, is personal. With me, it was hitting the proverbial rock bottom of my addiction. And that was I just had multiple layers of trauma. And the crisis was that I felt isolated and I felt alone. I felt like because I was on drugs that I couldn't tell anyone the exact nature of what was really going on.
Yeah.
My disease told me I deserved everything that was happening to me because I was a drug addict, and I just felt isolated. I couldn't talk to anyone, or I thought I couldn't talk to anyone. My substance use took me to some very low places with some very low people, and I put myself in a lot of terrible situations where awful things had happened to me. And I just felt isolated, that there was nothing I could do about it. I wish we did have the resources were available to me that are available now, but it wasn't. And then I ultimately ended up attempting suicide. I just felt like there was no way out. I couldn't stop using drugs, and I just felt that this was it. There was nothing else I could do,
Yeah, it's crisis, as you said, is so isolating, where you feel like nobody cares, nobody can help, but there are people who can help.
Yes.
And peer support, among other things, is a big part of that. one of the wonderful things about peer support is the way we approach crisis as people with lived experience and as people who are trauma informed.
Yes, yes, we do. Peer support specialists, we're trained in trauma-informed care. We're also able to use our lived experience. When I'm working with peers, I'm very sensitive to helping them realize that they're in a safe environment, that and building a sense of trustworthiness, and that letting them know that they're not alone, they feel protected, and that with peer support, offering that lived experience, I can share with them, hey, I know some of the types of pain you may be experiencing because I've been through some of those things myself. When a peer is sharing with me, they are battered or been beaten, I can relate and I can share with them and open that door and have that sense of connection that, hey, me too, and I'm here to help you. And just establishing that transparency and trustworthiness with people goes a long way. And like I said, I have that sympathetic and empathetic ear to what's going on with them and to helping them get to a better place.
Yeah, exactly. And another thing we're able to do to support people who are in crisis is really to form a recovery-oriented collaboration. And sometimes that's with clinicians, where they just sometimes need a peer with lived experience to help translate. Or sometimes it's with families, helping to translate their experiences, especially if they come from backgrounds where mental illness or substance use is stigmatized.
Yes.
And is seen as something you don't talk about or you don't get help for. And using our lived experience, we can be trauma informed in that we really are strengths based and can empower people to find their own pathway of recovery. I know that was hugely empowering for me when it wasn't someone just telling me what to do that may or may not fit, but letting me find my own path, but being there to support me while I was doing it. And also a real humility and responsiveness. That with peer support, and we've talked about this concept on previous shows, but that everything is so mutual.
Yes.
That we're not coming as the experts. We're the experts in our own lived experience in our recovery, but we're not coming as the experts with the answers, but we're coming in real humility as a fellow traveler to move alongside that person and help them find and walk in their own recovery path. And that can be really empowering as we operate in a person-centered way, that recovery looks different for every single person, that there are multiple pathways to recovery, and we can't say, well, this is the pathway you need to move on. And that also, we're very strengths-based. Where a lot of prior treatment, and I think this is changing, but a lot of prior treatment was, here's everything that's wrong and here's how we get you to a baseline.
Right.
This is looking at how are you strong and how can we grow from there. And instead of looking at what's wrong with you, looking at what happened to you. And how can we walk together and look at this and grow in recovery, finding those tools, finding those supports. Where I know when I was in crisis, I had no idea what was out there. Right. And it was so empowering to find out that there were support groups and that there were people who had been through what I'd been through and could help me. And alongside of all those things that we do, we also have a couple of fairly new emphases as peers. And sometimes it's, peers by themselves, and sometimes it's peers as part of a multidiscipline team. And the first one we'd like to talk about is the Mobile Crisis Unit that our own Christine Winter has been working on. And so Christine, what is the Mobile Crisis Unit and what do you do with the Mobile Crisis Unit?
Thanks, Steve. I'm glad to be here to talk about the Mobile Crisis Unit. The purpose of the Mobile Crisis Unit is to provide response, assessment, and intervention, timely intervention to individuals having a mental health crisis or at risk of having a mental health crisis or behavioral health crisis. It is considered an essential component of crisis care, and it has been proven a best practice. And right now we just finished a mobile co-response pilot of the mobile crisis unit with the Chesapeake Police Department, and it went really well. And we continue on with the mobile crisis unit because of such a good response, and we've gotten really good comments from the community at large. And so with that, we continue to go out Monday through Friday, approximately 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. right now. It is community-based, where we go to the person who could use diversion from more restrictive places like the emergency department. We work closely with Heron's Cove, which Tracy will speak on in just a minute. And I've been very happy to serve as a peer on the mobile crisis unit, along with a clinician at Chesapeake Integrated Behavioral Health, along with the two plainclothes officers. That kind of helps relax folks, knowing that there's not a uniformed police presence. So we try to really make a difference, really kind of emphasize the least restrictive environment. And as a peer, I am a strong advocate to keep care as person-centered as possible. And I am valuable from a peer standpoint because I do have the lived experience of, again, me too, being isolated, feelings of isolation, overwhelmed. I use the term extreme states of, and just not feeling like I might live another day. So I like to be able to bring a message of hope and to people, and do what I can as a peer, as a certified peer recovery specialist. It's been an amazing experience, and I guess that's what I wanted to say for now, but those come to mind when I talk about the mobile crisis unit. It looks like it's going to continue.
So you being a peer on that mobile crisis unit makes a difference that gives it a whole different flavor than if they didn't have a peer there.
Yes, let me emphasize it does make a difference, and that has been mentioned, that the people we've responded to help, the peers, have expressed that they enjoyed having me there, or they appreciated my presence. And it's a great team effort, though. It really is, and especially with the other peers here, y'all really help. So
that gets back to that collaboration we were talking about with Trauma Informed.
Yes.
Where we're collaborating sometimes with families, but also with police, with clinicians, because the goal is that person's recovery and that person's safety.
Right.
Yes.
The trauma part is so important. That too is part of my experience. And so many people that we see out in the environment in Chesapeake have a trauma background. There's some component there. So yeah, I bring that with me, and it's just been a wonderful experience.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I know it's really important when someone is experiencing a crisis and trauma, that when you respond, you come in as someone there to help. The police officers are in plain clothes. They're not intimidating with a uniform, like coming to arrest me and take me to jail. You're approaching the situation as, we're here to help you.
Yes, they've been great.
Yeah.
They
That
have
means a
wonderful
lot.
insight that they bring themselves, and they've been very helpful. So I think we have a good collaboration, like you mentioned
Yes.
before.
Yeah. And so Christine's definitely a part of the someone to go part of the crisis response. But we also have somewhere to go, and that's Heron's Cove, and that is Tracy. And Tracy, what is Heron's Cove, and what do you do as a peer at Heron's Cove?
Yeah, glad you asked. So at Herons Cove, we are a crisis center. Right now, we're operating from 8 to 8, Monday through Friday. We're working on going into weekends. It is a voluntary program that we offer, so we don't take anybody by force. What we do is take people in crisis, and again, what might be a crisis for someone else may not be for the next person. So,
Right.
yeah, we evaluate. So you can call. We do walk-ins. You don't have to have a referral. Sometimes family members bring them in, police officers, but we try to keep people from going to jail or into the hospital. So that is the purpose of Herons Cove. Best job I ever had. I love it. It was always what I was looking for. It's a passion for me. It's just not a paycheck. So when I go to work, it's not hard to get up and go versus the other jobs that I had. But what I do there, I am a peer support specialist. And thing is, I struggled with it at first working there because so many people have degrees, you know. And then I had to let myself know, degree don't have anything on lived experience.
Right.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I'm like, wow, your job is just as important as the next person. So people come in, I let them know, what brought me there. We do have requirements when you come into Herons Cove, which is you have to go through a triage and then a registration. After the registration, you go through a nurse's evaluation and then a site eval. These are mandatory. My job is not mandatory, so I think that's what kind of made me feel that way. So I normally just sit out in the lobby or the waiting area. So when people come in, though, I try to make them feel comfortable, but I let them know what brought me there. And a lot of people want to be with someone that has lived that experience, that understands. And that's what made my job so awesome, because once I share my experience, then they feel a little more comfortable being there. You get a lot of people that have family members that don't believe in getting help, So a lot of people fall into addiction even more, or more mental health challenges. So I just let them know, this is where you could be, because I was you at that time. So that's what made my job so great. And when they leave, I do follow-ups the next day. And the response that I get from 99% of the people that we've already offered service to is that they feel better, or it helped, it saved their life. And they call me back, They always call me back. So I do have clients that still check in with me, which makes me feel like I'm doing what I'm supposed to do.
Oh, that's amazing. What do you feel like you as a peer recovery specialist bring that would be not there at Herons Cove if you weren't there?
Well, I would say my experience. I'd give you try to give you a brief because I've been through a lot. So I have different ways to where I can give back to Herons Cove. And then actually when I went to apply for that job, I didn't even go for that position at Herons Cove. I went for a different position, well, for peer support, but at a different building, but I didn't get hired. And so the lady that was on the panel, which is my boss, Jessica, she was like, well, if they don't hire you, will you come work for me? And I was like, sure.
Awesome.
So I don't know. When I was leaving out my interview, I was like, do you know how to find me? So she was like, yeah, I know how to find you. So the people never called me back for the other position, and she called me, and I just told her in the interview because I kept messing up, and I'm like, listen, forget everything I just said, because that's not how it was supposed to go. I can only share my life experience, and that was, I had a crack addiction for years. My first husband, which I was married to in my teenage and 20 years, he introduced me to crack cocaine. And then he was very abusive, so I left him and I got clean for a little while, and then I relapsed. and I ended up marrying a dealer, and he was abusive. And when I got tired of being abused by him, I left. He shot me through a window, and that's what confined me to a wheelchair. You know, I was shot at 30. I'm 51 now, but I live to tell the story. So people say, you know, I'm sorry, but no, don't be sorry, because now I know what my purpose is, you know? So I had a nervous breakdown maybe 10 years ago, to where when I was incarcerated, to where when I came back in my right mind, it was like 2 months later. So the medicine that I know that is prescribed for mental health challenges, a lot of people think it doesn't work, but it does work. Yeah, so, and I haven't had a challenge like that since. So I just thank God for that. But that's my experience, and that's what I could give back to make a difference when I'm there.
That lived experience makes such a difference.
Yeah.
You know,
It
when
does.
people talk to us, and we're not knocking degrees or anything, but when people talk to
Right.
us and they realize that, you know, we've been there, maybe not exactly there, but close enough there that we can connect and have empathy, that makes such a profound difference in people's recovery. To feel sometimes maybe for the first time that you're truly being heard. And so, you know, peers, and I'll just say something about Heron's Cove. The whole vibe is so different from a hospital,
It
right?
is.
It is.
The whole vibe of the whole place is so different from a hospital. But peer support is also such an important component there, because that really completes that vibe.
It does.
Because it really does, that peer element helps keep it person-centered, strengths-based, recovery-oriented. And, you know, Tracy's right. I've heard from other people that, you know, she's getting calls
I am.
after people get out of Heron's Cove, because that peer support made a difference, and they're wanting to continue to connect with that. And, you know, all of us, you know, when people do that with us, we're able to help connect them with other supports, you know, whether it's NAMI Connections or some other peer type of support, to help them continue to grow in their recovery. So, you know, what an awesome time to be a peer recovery specialist,
Yes, it
and
is.
how special it is to be able to help people with crisis.
Right.
Yes, yes. Well, that concludes this segment. I'd like to say thank you for joining us, and a special thanks to Chesapeake Television for having us to provide this life-saving information. Once again, thank you and goodbye.